Greetings viewers, I am Eric the Car Guy because I have this t-shirt. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and because you tuned in to today's ETCG 1 video, I'm going to wish you a happy birthday, a very special happy birthday, and offer you this digital cake for your enjoyment. The future of motorsport. Yeah, it's kind of on my mind today. I'm not going to claim to be a motorsports expert. In fact, I barely followed anything growing up or what have you. It wasn't necessarily my thing. So why the heck am I making a video about the future of motorsport? Well, here's the thing. Over the past few years, as Eric the Car Guy, I've been exposed to a lot of different types of racing, and I've met race car drivers. I have talked to a lot of people in the industry. I've done some things that people that are into racing would be quite envious of. Let's just put it that way. Racing has always been expensive, but the thing is it keeps getting more expensive, and it's getting harder and harder to maintain and sponsor expensive race teams and things like that. I mean, every year you're chasing new technology, you're trying to be on the bleeding edge of what happens in automotive technology, or, you know, depending upon what kind of motorsport you're talking about. It could be boats, it could be off-roading stuff, things that I'm not directly or have not directly had contact with. But the thing that I hear, just sort of through the grapevine, is, like I said, attendance is down and things are costing more and more. So it leads me to wonder what the future of motorsports is. Well, really, this conversation, this one-way conversation I'm having at the moment, comes about because I just finished watching a Netflix series called Hyperdrive. And those of you not familiar with it, I'll link it down in the description, but it's a Netflix original thing that was put together and combines drifting with a lot of vehicle control situations. It's more like an obstacle course. One of the things I personally like so much about it is somebody who's not necessarily involved or invested in motorsport, is the way it was presented more than anything else. I mean, it was not just sitting there watching something happen in front of you, which is great, you know, going to live events and all that. But truthfully, when you're at a racing event, you might be far away from what's happening, and you might be either listening to it on a headset at the same time, or, you know, there's some form of augmentation that often goes with it to bring you closer to that action. You might be there, but you might not necessarily be close to that action, and you might want to have a desire to get closer to it. And I think, like I said, this Netflix series sort of offered that for me, in that, it was a produced television show is what it was, and based around this competition of several different people around the world that had, the stories of their own and built vehicles of their own. And the vehicles varied all over the place. It wasn't like going to a NASCAR event where all the vehicles are meant to be the same. I mean, they even go through precise measuring and everything to make sure that everybody's vehicle is the same, so that it is a quote-unquote driver's race. That being said, they didn't, adhere to that, other than I'm sure some safety equipment or things like that in the vehicles that entered this competition. So you had everything from V6 Mustangs to 1,000 horsepower Lamborghinis that were all competing against one another for this title. And you would think that the vehicle would give a person an advantage, but the way they set up the competition, it was all about, the driver's abilities, the vehicle control, and what they could exhibit. I said drifting. Drifting is a big part of that. In fact, I'm friends with Chris Fix, who, as you know, is into drifting. And I've asked him a few times, what it was like to get started, and how it is, what it is that you're actually after when you're drifting. And ultimately it comes down to vehicle control, which, of course, it's like that with most motorsports, but I think drifting in particular has gained a lot of favor, at least here in the West. I think it's been a thing over in Europe and in Asia for some time, and now it's starting to permeate here in North America, let's call it. But getting around to my point with this, if the standard racing series like NASCAR started out as, moonshine runners, and then taking vehicles that were very close to what you could purchase at the dealership, race on Sunday and go in and buy on Monday, I think was what the term they used to use. It was an advertising thing. And what I think appealed to people about it initially at the onset was, they could see a car at a race and then say, hey, I'm going to go get me one of those, or go get me something like that. And back in the 60s in particular, you could walk into, a rental car place, Hertz, and purchase, you could rent a race car and go racing with it. And I think personally that connection to a vehicle, brings you closer to that motorsport. The idea that, like I said, you could actually go in and purchase a vehicle that was raced or something very similar to what was raced on the track that weekend. And now things seem to be so far removed from that, there's a disconnect. Whereas this thing with Hyperdrive, it seemed like I had more of a connection with it. I mean, these were vehicles built by those people, not professional racing teams, by fathers and sons and fathers and daughters and, you know, mothers, daughter, whatever. But they brought their own stuff. They made their own stuff, and they taught themselves and wanted to break into the industry or whatever. They wanted to, you know, show themselves off, be in this competition. I just wonder if, as one thing fades out that used to be a direct connection to the public, like NASCAR used to be, if in its place we end up with something like Hyperdrive. And I'm going to take it a step further. Speed Racer. The cartoon from back in the day that I watched growing up as a kid, all the way up to that movie that came out. I think about that type of racing, and I think about, you know, video games and Grand Theft Auto and all that kind of stuff, and how younger people get connected with motorsport. And it's more like a video game. It's more like what I think I saw on Netflix, which, like I said, was a series of crazy obstacle courses and things like that that people had to compete against to, you know, to win the competition. I just wonder if there will come a day where that is the norm, that is the type of racing, like the Speed Racer thing actually becomes a reality. Well, if you've seen the series, you know that basically where they're racing isn't really a racetrack. It's basically a converted factory or whatever, or industrial park. And they set up all these crazy things that I mentioned. So trying to set up grandstands and things like that in a place like that would be rather difficult, and you run into the same problem that I mentioned earlier about, you know, actually being at the race but wanting to see what's happening at the race. Well, envision a world where the race is actually something that, yeah, can happen live, and maybe you could be there on the spot in some way, shape, or form, but for the most part, instead of people traveling to the race, people from all over the world can tune in on, like, say, a mobile phone or mobile device or a computer. Something of that nature, and that's how they participate. That's how they buy their tickets, and they get a chance to have more access through all those different camera angles, those drones flying over, whatever, and they get to, you know, watch it more like the television show that I saw, you know, that I really enjoyed. That's what I'm putting out there today to you. Is I'm kind of wondering, okay, if these other established motorsports are starting to fade out because of all the expense, if you start bringing in grassroots people, if you start bringing in, you know, amateur drivers into a setting like this and allow them to shine, or, you know, not shine so much, and that becomes something that's a thing in the future, what do you think of that? What do you think of that type of racing, or that access to racing, like I said, on a mobile phone or computer? You just buy a subscription and you have access to the race or the racing season or what have you, and you follow it that way. You don't necessarily have to physically be there. Not that you can't in one way, shape, or form. I'm sure they have some sort of, you know, meet and greet, physical promotion of it some way, somehow, but I think it could reach a lot more people by doing that rather than trying to fill seats at a racetrack someplace and, you know, having everybody travel to there and then travel back. If you've ever gone to a race or anything like that, Indianapolis 500, perfect example. If you think you're getting out of that traffic, it's not going to happen. And it's not that I couldn't have an appreciation for motorsports and drivers and the things that they do. It's just that I didn't personally feel as connected with it as some people who are into the sport do. But I did feel connected to this thing that I watched on Netflix. And I liked it because of the amateur side of things, and I liked it because of how it was presented, and I liked what was happening. To me, that was exciting. I've sat at NASCAR races and just watched things go around the track, and I'll be flat out honest, I actually kind of took a nap for a little bit. Okay, maybe it wasn't exciting to me. Maybe I'll just come out and admit that. I mean, I can respect and admire all the work and effort that goes into that. I really, really can. But at the end of the day, do I see myself, you know, after going to that and after experiencing things on that level, do I really feel like, yeah, I really want to go back and do that again? I was thought, no, that was really cool. Now what? But this Netflix thing was like, I hope they do another season of that. And I wonder if that will become a thing. Hey, maybe I should make an ETCG1 video and ask my viewers about it, if they've seen that and what they think about the future of motorsports and where they think things are going. Because I know a lot of you out there are way more into it than I am, know way more about it than I do, and could probably offer some interesting insight into what I just talked about. So that's what we're here for, discussions on ETCG1. Don't want to drag this out for too much longer. I'll put links in the description of the stuff that I mentioned and additional videos and stuff like that that might be of interest to you. If you have automotive questions, I ask that you head over to ericthecarguy.com. That will also be linked in the description as usual. And I want to thank you for tuning in and look forward to your comments and your feedback on this, what I think will be an interesting topic. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty, and I will see you next time.